Today's episode is sponsored by Future State Media, experts in off-Amazon traffic for Amazon sellers. Future State Media will build you a custom-made website to deliver sales for you on Amazon. Built to grab traffic from search engines and social media, your site can be used as a secret weapon for launching products on Amazon or just to stabilize your Amazon sales. It means you can also build an email list on autopilot. Go to futurestatemedia.com for your free guide to Google SEO for Amazon sellers today. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the amazing FBA podcast. I'm here with a really great guest for me today because I'm obsessing with process right now because I want to make more money in less time and with more consistency. I don't know about you, but that's my aim. So Trent Dyrsmid is with us today. He's the owner of a seven-figure Amazon wholesale business, the host of the Bright Ideas podcast, and the founder of Wholesale, which is a great workflow or SOP solution used by thousands of Amazon sellers. So a massive underachiever. Obviously, welcome to the show, Trent.
Michael, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming on. So you're obviously one of those genuinely serial entrepreneurs. I know you've been doing a lot of stuff for many years in a variety of places, but even those things I've just mentioned is obviously huge achievements. I mean, tell us a bit about your story. How did you get to this point?
I grew up, probably like any other kid, just two regular working parents. I didn't go to college. Instead, I chose working in sales. And my very first job, I had success relatively quickly, and it taught me how to communicate with other people and how to make cold calls and prospect and open doors. And that was a hugely valuable portion of my early career. And I started my first business. So I pretty much worked in sales my entire career until I decided I wanted to work for myself. And that was way back in 2001 when I started my very first business, which I ran for 8 years. It was twice ranked as one of Canada's profit 100 fastest growing companies. And then I sold it for over 7 figures. And that, for me, growing up, I actually grew up, my parents were on welfare at one point in time, or at least that's what we call it in Canada, when the government's giving you money because you can't make enough on your own. And so that was a big life changer for me. To get to finally not be poor anymore was profound, to say the least. And then after selling that business, of course, I took a little bit of time off. And then I found my way onto the internet, all kind of just by accident. And I discovered that people were making money from behind a computer screen doing all sorts of things. And I became fascinated with that. And so I started doing all sorts of these things. I was building my very first thing was I was an Amazon associate. And I built this network of 30 or 40 different micro niche sites that were all basically providing reviews for digital cameras. And I started getting commissions from Amazon for selling digital cameras, and life just kind of took off. I mean, there's a lot more detail, obviously, but that is how I got started on the world of making money online. And that was about 10 years ago. And my podcast, which I've been doing for about 10 years, has led me into all sorts of amazing opportunities. And I guess the one most relevant to this conversation in your audience is back in 2016. I had interviewed a guy on my show by the name of Dan Metters, and I was struggling. 4 months before that, I'd started trying to do private label on Amazon, and I was not having a great deal of success. And that's when Wholesale came along and literally changed my life. That poster, the picture, the print you see behind me is the Inc. 5000 award. We ranked number 254 on the Inc. 5000 in 2019, largely because of how quickly our Amazon wholesale business has grown.
That's a huge and impressive list of business successes. And I like the fact that I think the business background being deeper is good because it puts the Amazon thing into perspective. A lot of people have their first business experience with Amazon, and I'm kind of like that. I mean, my first successful business experiences have been on Amazon, but I do think it means you can put the business model it into context. And above all, a lot of things in the end are business is business, right? And a lot of people get to Amazon specific. And one of the reasons I wanted you on the show is because I actually came across the Flowster app that you've created, or Flowster system, because I was digging around on the internet looking for process driven applications, because I'm just realizing more and more that I have to stop manually doing things or being inconsistent. And I've theoretically got the idea of process and SOPs years ago, but I'm actually trying to really sweat to make it consistent now. Hence why I came across you. And Dan Meadows is somebody else that I've interviewed as well for a podcast. So I think I'd like to dive a little bit into the difference between private label and wholesale, but we'll be doing that in the next episode. I think I know a lot of people find that quite tricky. But let's look at the success first. The wholesale thing. So tell me about your wholesale experiences. You said you grew to be 254 on the Inc. 5000 list. So that's quite a success from 2016. So what took you there?
So it started with a decision. When I interviewed Dan, I was almost ready to give up on my Amazon private label business. I had two different products. I'd spent all sorts of money on pay per click and doing product launches and promotions. And while we were making revenue, we had no profit. And I was kind of like, I was over it. And then I met Dan and didn't even know the wholesale thing existed. And so when I finished the interview with him, I turned to my wife and I go, we're going to do that start right now. And within 5 months, we were doing over $100,000 a month. So how did that happen is a question I get asked a lot, as you might imagine. And the very first thing had nothing to do with any systems or any technology or any tools or any training course or anything. It came with a decision that was firm. This is what we're going to do. And I knew from being a consumer on Amazon and like 10 minutes worth of research that most of the biggest sellers on Amazon use the wholesale model. Companies like NetRush and eTails and Blue Colony Trading. And I mean, these companies are doing tens, hundreds of millions a year in revenue by reselling products they don't make. And so that was all the proof that I needed that the model was very, very scalable. And so I took my entrepreneurial experience and applied it to this new problem. And the problem was, how do I grow sales on Amazon? And I realized very, very quickly that if you want to grow sales in wholesale, the way you do that is to form more relationships with more suppliers so you can get access to more strong selling products so you can put them in your product portfolio. It's not exactly rocket science. So, okay, that's great. I need as many relationships as I can, or I need access to as many products as I can. How do I do that? Well, if I want to have relationships with brands, that means I need to talk to brands. Okay, well, how do I do that? Well, I need to send emails, lots of emails. So, what I did differently than I think most everybody who gets into this is I didn't ever think, well, I'm going to sit down and be the one doing the product research and finding lists of competitive sellers and doing the product extractions and getting the contact information and then sending all the emails. Like that's the process, because I realized that would be a highly ineffective use of my time, because I've been working with virtual assistants in the Philippines by this point in my podcast business and my other business for, like 7 years. So I was well comfortable working with virtual assistants. So I figured out what we needed to do. Then I wrote processes. So the first step was finding competitors and extracting them. Okay, well, that's a process. So I wrote a document that described in an extremely high level of detail exactly how that was done. And then I hired a virtual assistant, one person full time, to do just that. And then that one person became two people, became three people, and I think maybe even four people within our first 5 months. I had this our little mini army of virtual assistants following all these processes that I had written, so that all I had to do was focus on the thing that I could not delegate to a virtual assistant, and that was replying to all the replies that I received from this large volume of emails that we were sending every single week to prospective suppliers, and taking those conversations and converting them into an online meeting and then a productive discussion and then a purchase order and then an agreement with that brand to become one of their exclusive sellers. That is the highest and most valuable use of my time. So that's what I was doing 6, 7, 8 hours a day, every single day, because I delegated all the preparatory work to make that happen to my virtual assistants because I had processes. So that's a
Nice.
simple to explain, but it's a huge distinction, because while most people who start off in wholesale, they're maybe struggling to send emails to 10 or 20 or maybe 30 prospective suppliers a week. I was sending emails every single week to hundreds and hundreds of suppliers. So over 5 months, I've now contacted, I don't forget what the number is, but we'll call it tens of thousands of prospective suppliers versus somebody else might have maybe got to like 300. So the odds are wildly stacked in my favor that I'm going to be more successful because I'm just taking more swings at the bat by sending so many more emails to so many more suppliers.
Nice. Yeah, I have to say it does make sense, and I know that it's not the Achilles heel, but the known sort of weak point in the system of wholesaling, or the place where, in other words, you need to push through with either a combination of some determination and focus and not giving up and being smart about it, is that thing of you're not going to close most people, and even if and if you're used to a different world like private label, whatever, and we can discuss the wholesale world a bit more because I think it's a model pretty much all private label sellers should know about, actually, in my opinion, these days. And this has been a bit of a revelation to me as well, like you, because of a podcast and talking to Dan Meadows, the same person. But anyway, you've got to learn about this thing. But what might be a surprise to you is that you've got to kind of sell the suppliers into having you as a reseller because most of them don't necessarily want you, and therefore it's a percentage game. And you've got to allow for the fact that if you're doing well, maybe what did you find your percentage? Well, about 4% of the people that you would approach would go ahead. 1%. What was your sort of
Oh,
rough?
not even that high. So I
Really
know what the
interesting.
numbers are because we've
Yeah.
tracked them since day one. So we have what we call our email to booked call ratio, which is what percentage of the people that we send an email to end up booking a call with us. And when I looked last week, it was 1.18%. And that's the cumulative number over our 3.5, nearly 4 years of doing this because we've been tracking that forever. 1 point, so just call it a 1%. So that means I send 100 emails, I get one phone call. That doesn't mean I want an account. That just means I got what, and when I say phone call, I mean online meeting. I don't do phone calls. Online meeting is the way to go. You want to be able to see the person you're talking to. Then, but that's the hardest part. If you can get them to agree to speak with you, your odds of winning the account are actually quite high because invariably what you will find is they probably have listings that are not very well optimized. They probably have negative product reviews that are not being responded to. They may or may not have any ad campaigns running. When if there's none running, that means none of their current sellers are bothering to run any ad campaigns. And most importantly of all of that, they probably have too many sellers, which is why they didn't want to talk to you in the first place. They don't know who they are and they don't know how to get rid of them. If you come onto that call and you say, I know how to fix all that stuff, and I'm not going to charge you any money to do any of it, I'll make my money by reselling your product, your odds of success are very high. Like if you're a reasonably good, if you've had some experience in sales and you know how to if you know how to follow a sales call process, because there's a process to doing sales call, I would say you can close 1 in 4, 1 in 4, 1 in 5, something like that.
Great.
Now,
So,
in the beginning,
yeah.
I didn't close that well because I didn't know what
Yeah.
I was doing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's like anything else. But what's interesting is essentially there's a saying, I don't know, it's a really well known saying in internet marketing that really traffic just buys you a lot of opportunities to not be that great, but to still make a success overall. So in other words, in this sort of, it's an outbound sales rather than inbound marketing type thing, which is beloved of everyone in the internet. And me, I'm also guilty of this. I try and get inbound sales as the answer to everything. In other words, SEO, Facebook ads, whatever it may be. Whereas actually, emailing somebody proactively is great, but whichever way you do it, you've got to have a raw set of raw material flowing through the pipes, right, in order to give you a chance. And I was just reflecting that if you're getting 1 in 100, so we say, so 1% of people that go from email to booked call, if you're sending 30 emails a week, you're maybe going to book a call once every 3 4 weeks. And if you're closing 1 in 4, you might, if you're lucky, close a new account in the first month. And if you're actually not going to close at 1 in 4, it's going to be probably 2 or 3 months. So that I can imagine that. I'm just imagining how most people do this and end up going, yeah, this business model doesn't work, and give up. Because I've come
Yep.
across that a lot with a lot of things. I'm just reverse engineering disaster and then reverse engineering what you did, and examining the difference. So I guess you'd end up with an account within the first 2 3 weeks, even if you weren't good at closing, right? Whereas those guys might never do
Getting
it.
accounts every, I was getting accounts every week.
Really
And some
amazing.
weeks I'd get multiple accounts because my
Yeah.
calendar was full. I
Yeah.
mean, I would come into the office and I would have, you know, 3 pre-scheduled meetings with brands.
Mm,
So we call them discovery calls on a typical
hmm.
day, 3. And I
Mm,
would have probably 30 to 40 emails in my inbox to reply to from other
yeah,
brands that I was hoping to talk into taking a call with me. So I had
yeah.
endless opportunities. And as you might imagine, even though in week one, where I hadn't really got my pitch figured out, although I should say I did go to a trade show before I did any of this, and I talked to 30 brands at a trade show over 3 days, so I kind of knew what I was doing just based upon that 3 days worth
That
of
is a
experience.
fairly critical point, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so we can dive into that in a minute if
Yes.
you want to,
Yes.
but because I was talking to brands so often, my pitch got really good really quick. That's the point I wanted to make. And most people, as you described, and this is the like 99%, because I've talked to so many Amazon sellers over the years. They are making the list of competitors, they're doing the product extractions, you got to find all the contact information, you got to go on LinkedIn. They're putting in 15 hours a week just to be able to send 20 emails, which is ridiculous
That sounds
when you can have
horrendous.
other people do that work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say that um, I definitely am a fan of using VAs. I mean, with the podcast, I guess like yourself, because if you're going to produce, I know you produce several hundred episodes in over 10 years. I mean, I've done several hundred over, what, 4 years. And eventually the sheer time demand and focus that, forces you to outsource and give up, really. So I think, yeah, that the fact that you'd had that background and the fact that you had the sales background, obviously made you like it was the perfect storm. Like, no wonder you looked at this and thought this is the perfect opportunity for me, because I can see how that matches your skill set. So we're going to have to talk about how people can do it for themselves who are perhaps less impressive in their background. But first of all, tell me about preparing for the calls with the trade show, because you just slipped that one in there. And um uh, we ought to dig into that. How did you think of that first? When did that even occur to you to do that?
I don't remember exactly how. I probably talked to somebody, because I find I'm the originator of very few original ideas. I'm a great copycat and
Yeah,
improver. Take
me
somebody
too.
else's idea and make it better. So I probably talked to somebody.
Yeah.
And this coincidentally, so I went to this show called Super Zoo, which is one of the biggest pet trade shows in the US. So it's just the pet industry. And I didn't even actually, I got one account at the show. Um, but what it was really useful for was in a condensed period of time. Because when you walk up to a human being at a trade show, it's unlikely they're just going to turn their back on you and say, go away. Like, they'll take a few more words. If they don't want to talk to you, eventually they'll say, go away. But most people aren't that rude. So I had the opportunity to figure out firsthand, what questions do I need to ask? And what do these people really care about? And what are they hearing from other people? And so I would just walk up and be friendly. You don't need a training course to be friendly. Hey, you guys have a fantastic booth. How's the show going for you? I wouldn't say anything about me. Just get some ice breaking, rapport building conversation. And once you've got rapport, eventually they're going to say, so what's your deal? What do you do? Do you have a store? Do you have this? Because they're expecting that you're probably a retailer. And you can say, yeah, actually, I'm an online retailer. And I work with companies doing this. You should have your little elevator pitch that you've practiced beforehand. It should take you less than 30 seconds to say. And I said, I put my team, put you on my short list of companies of all the people. I don't want to talk to everybody that's here, but you're one of the ones I do want to talk to. So I'm a little bit flattery right there. And that's true, because I did have my VA team use Jungle Scout or Viral Launch to figure out of everyone that was attending that trade show. They made me a short list of the people who had brands that were doing well. So I wasn't like blindly wandering the aisles. I had my map figured out. I knew I was going to this booth, and then I was going to that booth, and then I was going to that booth. So when I say I talked to 35 brands over 3 days, or 38 or 33, whatever the hell the number was, they were all brands who were already having success on Amazon. So very quickly, I got it figured out that their number one issue, the thing they cared about most, was identifying, removing unauthorized sellers that are causing map violations. So then I just started skewing my conversation, my elevator pitch, to that. And where that really served me was once I got back to my office and we started sending all these cold emails, I knew what to put on my homepage, and I knew what to put in my emails, and I knew what to talk about, and I knew what questions to ask. and the culmination of all of that is was obviously critical to my success.